when we were going through COVID affecting how the kids were being taught and what they were being forced to have to go through to just to show up at school, we had so many parents that were really, really upset that why do they have to keep being forced into this, and why do you keep making the decision for them, and why can't I make that decision? Having the experiences of trying to be present in the different things that my daughter has been in as far as all of her extracurriculars, and wanting to be that presence that is not just there to cheer her on, but also, reinforcing what goes on. I felt like I had been given the opportunities that I had up to that point that would be the skill sets that I needed to kind of be part of a board that would help run the school. I audited school districts for roughly 5 years. I've been very invested in the financial side of it, and knowing how things work and how voting works and how the different funds that are set up in the schools are based and what the necessities are. I see those skills and the heart that I had naturally for wanting to make the kids the focal point of what's going on and stand up for the parents that don't feel like they're being listened to. So just through talking and prayer, that's where I felt that I was being brought.
First, I'd like to speak about a topic I find very important: legacy. I remember when my father told me I would never learn as much about a subject until I taught it to someone else, and I have found that to be true in my own life. My legacy does not lie within the craft of my hand or the memory of my name, but the mark that will be faintly inscribed on this earth after I am gone is written on my children's hearts. I stand firmly for the parents' rights to establish the best way to raise their children. As we see family values and religious beliefs disregarded, I cannot find a fostering of cultural differences, but a very distinct effort to erase every culture for one mindset. Not to overcome where we depart, but to remove such departures in an effort to create a collective. This will not teach us anything about acceptance or living together in society, only establish a future generation that even further suffers from believing this is also very normal. As we daily seek to gain wisdom and knowledge, we must also understand that these things only gain their fullest value when passed on. So in closing, I must leave you with 2 questions. What is your legacy, and what must we do to see that it endures the generations? Thank you.
Well, my name is Justine Conley. I am a real estate agent here in town. I'm highly involved with PTA. I do a lot with the primary school, intermediate school, mostly the lower levels. I've always just had a big heart for helping with the schools, whether it be the physical school itself as far as adding playground equipment, books to the library, anything like that, or boosting morale, fundraiser events or any type. I've been cried in the face in front of the school before. It's been about 7 years of doing that kind of stuff with the school. And I just felt called to help on a bigger level. So this is totally outside of my comfort zone for me. So learning a lot. I've learned so much just since I filed my candidacy in December. I feel like this is a lot for me to take on, but I'm ready for it and I'm excited.
My name is Mike Ryan. I am also running for the Bolivar School Board. I'm also, like Paula, a Bolivar graduate. I grew up here, went to school here. I've got 3 boys in Bolivar schools. I want to give back to my community as I was afforded the great education I got through Bolivar schools through my K-12 experience. And I want that same opportunity for generations to come and for my boys to experience that as they have and continue to do, and working with those teachers and administration to make that best possible opportunity. If COVID has taught us anything, it's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging, and I want to be that person who takes a stand and rises up, serving the community very actively with the city. I was a city alderman for a couple of years. I love Bolivar. Bolivar is my hometown. I love Bolivar. I'm willing to go to the extra extent to see that Bolivar students and staff have the greatest opportunity to learn and grow. I'm kind of a guy, if you want to see something change, you've got to step up and stop talking about it. And so if I want to see it change, and so I can sit and complain all day long and say how things are bad and awful and horrible, but at the end of the day, I've got to do something about it. I want to make a difference, and that's why I'm running for the city school board.
Good.
Thank you. And I'm Paula Hubbard. I'm running for my 3rd term on the Bolivar Board of Education. Bolivar is my hometown. I'm a Bolivar High School graduate. I graduated from Southwest Baptist University. My interest has always been in working with our teachers to see what they needed to make education happen. You know, when it comes down to it, it's about educating our children. And one of the most important things I've learned in being a board member is the role of advocacy in Jeff City. We do a lot. We lobby a lot. As a matter of fact, we were in Jeff City just 2 weeks ago and talking to them about the impact rules in Jeff City have in a very hands-on way for our students. So I've enjoyed my time on the board and really look forward to continuing to have a third term.
There's a lot of things in our culture right now that are driving what's going on. Not just COVID. I mean, there's critical race theory that's trying to make its way into the teachings of the school. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of gender equality, gender-based, teachings that are trying to be pushed throughout various levels of different educational systems, and it's going to be coming up to the point that we're going to have to address those things in Bolivar as far as approving those types of things being taught or shutting it down and making sure that what's happening in the schools, that the superintendent is actually leading through that and addressing any of those. So we also have to maintain the communication with the teachers and the parents about what is your student being taught, not just COVID or a resurgence of something wanting to force them into making us have to send them in different ways, but the state has already addressed that in multiple ways too by the lawsuit being brought that prevents the schools from being able to enforce measures that are, COVID mitigation ways. Not only that, but the state of Missouri refused to allow school districts to use the state to refund their bonds unless they wrote and they signed off that they refused to do any of the mitigation circumstances, so they wouldn't be in non-compliance with the lawsuit that came through. So there's a lot of school districts around the United States, around Missouri, that say that they lost money because they were not able to refinance bonds because they refused to put their names down and say they weren't going to break that part of the lawsuit. So there's a lot of things that are coming through, and just those two are going to be, what they're being taught and making those decisions is going to be very important. They had to actually sign that they agreed they would not move into those mandates again, or else they would be against their bonds. They would actually have to, they would face legal consequences for breaking their bond covenant.
It was so frustrating on the board to know that so many different entities had so many different rules that we had to abide by.
How did you get those rules?
How did we get those rules?
How did you get those rules that you're abiding by?
Well, that's a great question.
Was that through the ESSER money?
No.
That you took? Weren't there certain guidelines you had to abide by if you took the ESSER money?
There were not.
So that was free and clear. There were no strings attached to that money.
No.
Wow. Good question.
No, there weren't. The district, under the guidance of the health department, had quarantine. It was the quarantine guidelines, and I really wish there had been more. I wish there had been more guidance from the state level and the Department of Health. As here's what we're going to do, and here's where we stand. And while it was such a tough decision, to the whole mask mandate thing.
No, it wasn't.
I agree.
That was your decision as a board and as the administrator. It wasn't a tough decision at all. I beg to differ with you.
If this is going to turn into just I'd be happy to explain where I was coming from. If I understood correctly, you wanted to hear what we thought, and I would love to tell you.
I would love to know the answer to that, to why. I wasn't there. I don't have a dog in this fight, other than standing up for what I believe is correct. And when you have parents that show up that say we're in charge of our kids, not a school board member is not in charge of our children. And so when you have parents that say we don't want this, why, as a board member, why did you vote against the parents?
Because there were also parents who said they did, and there were other entities in our community that said that they did. And ultimately, to keep more kids in school, that's the route we chose. And in hindsight, could we have done things differently? Maybe so.
If it comes
from
around
doing-
again, will you do things differently?
I think so. I think so. I think we've learned a lot.
Where did the guidelines come from? Is that from the state health department or from?
From our county health department, and they were following CDC guidelines because the Missouri Department of Health wasn't issuing very clear guidelines. It was very confusing.
You do know that you didn't have to follow the county health guidelines.
Yeah.
You do know that,
There's
right?
there's a state law that says this.
Oh, no, you didn't have to follow those guidelines.
No.
I know that for a
We can probably
fact.
discuss that at a different time. I don't necessarily know that this is the place, but according to the attorney that the district paid, whose opinion we heed, we chose to follow his guidance. In hindsight, do I wish we would have gone back and not had a mask mandate? Absolutely. Happily day, yes. How much easier would it have been? At the time, we made the best decision we did with what we had.
Well, it still wouldn't have been easy. The decision to do either one would have been difficult. But the problem
Absolutely.
was standing on the principles that you want to stand on to reflect the community that you're in. It didn't feel like that's what was happening, so that's why there was a fight.
Sure.
And then,
right,
so
it was
you
very
back
two-sided,
back off onto falling onto trying to cover yourselves with an attorney that says that this is the way we should move forward. But ultimately, we still have to be able to stand up to the convictions of, I still don't feel that that's right, and I refuse to vote for that as being the correct way. And I think that moving
Somebody
forward,
could have done that.
and it's the one thing you do see with a lot of what it looks like the board, the teachings of what's trying to go through is that they do want boards to try and be in conjunction with each other and not have dissenting opinions. Like they would prefer that you be in accordance and make a decision as one after discussion. And I think that scares people off of being a dissenting opinion and saying that I'm still going to stick for not. You're not really privy to a lot of the research and the discussions after an agenda is being brought out, that these are the discussions that are going to happen because we're going to have to vote on things. We're going to have open discussions before we can vote. That there's a lot of individual research and a lot of trying to get down to the bottom of what's going on, that unfortunately when you show up to the public meeting, it feels like, well, there's none of that. You almost feel like you'd rather just have, even though it was discussed maybe prior to get your opinion, okay, I think I know where I stand on this, is maybe still asking the question just so that it's presented out to people who attend that, oh, they did think of that question, because I'm thinking, how would you come across that without asking a couple of questions? And maybe it's just that the board meetings have so much packed in and are so long, we're not privy to a lot of those discussions and researches that maybe we wish we were, to know that the decisions are being made based off of actually doing some research and discussion to it.
I saw a disregard by the board towards the parents of the community, and I was upset by it. I watched as some board members bickered with parents rather than understanding the authority that position has. It's not a spot to bicker with parents. It's a spot to listen and understand what they have to say and take what they have to say into consideration.
At a board meeting?
Yes.
I think once all the masking and the quarantining happened, it drove me into taking up more of a stance and taking up more of an interest of wanting to hear what was happening. But like you said, whenever you were in the meeting, it kind of felt like, was there even anything talked about? I mean, and so it drove me to want to have transparency with myself as far as I don't understand what's going on. So the drive is, I want to actually know all this information that's coming in and then try and disseminate what I can. Because you do want to be open. You want to have people be able to reach out and say, what's going on? What exactly are we talking about around here? And you can feel free to share the information coming out.
I was looking for that last,
yeah.
People are going to think you're trying to hide things.
And I was looking for the last board meeting before it happened, and I was searching on a mobile device going, I can't even find where it's even mentioned that there's a board meeting. And finally, I come across and get, well, there's one blurb. If you go to the very specific spot within the Bolivar, website, and then you go into the board and look for there, and then there was a tentative upcoming meeting that was there. But as far as getting that information out and getting what is the agenda even being talked about. I looked for the agenda. It's supposed to be posted. It's supposed to be posted 24 hours ahead of the meeting so that you meet the sunshine law requirements. But I went by the administration building, and there was nothing on the outside doors. That they were on the inside doors where they're locked, so you can't get into the building. There was no way to know what was coming on the agenda. No way to know what are the talking points. What are we voting on? What are they voting on? What's being improved? And so that just infuriates me. That's like, why can't I get this information? So wanting to be driven into, I think we need to be heard from the issues we were having through COVID, to then saying, I want to actually be able to shine a light on what this is and actually be able to make good decisions that go along with it, because we're all trying to make the best decisions for kids and teachers and the administration, but it's not one and then forget the others. They all should benefit from what we're doing, but sometimes you're just so lost in what's going on. And I don't want to be lost. I want to actually know.
I just think we've got some things we could do better at. We can improve at. And I want us to see us to learn and grow in the things that we've made mistakes. We have made mistakes. And to learn from those mistakes and not to repeat those mistakes, hopefully. But just growing and learning. I bleed blue and gold. And so I want to give back to my future blue and gold people. And so I want to see if there's some areas that we need to work on, if there's some communication we need to work on, if there's some areas of communication amongst administration and board members and student body and teachers and parents and school board. I want to begin to work on those things so that we have a working relationship. We're not going to agree on everything, I know that. But we can have time we have a conversation about, hey, I hear you. I hear your voice. And that's something that I'm going to commit to, is listening to, if given the opportunity, is to listen. A lot more than I'll speak sometimes, because I believe listening is important.
A big thing for me, I hear a lot of people feel like they're kind of in the dark with what's going on. I want to bring more transparency to the board legally. I know there's legal matters you can't necessarily talk about, but I feel like I had a lot of people tell me, I didn't even know this was going to happen. We just voted on this, and I didn't even know that was a thing that was going to happen. So I kind of want to bring more transparency, more communication. Like I said, a lot of people come to me and ask questions, what's going on? What's, even dates or whatever they have questions about. So I feel like if I can be more involved on the board, get more of that information out to people, the community just feels like they're kind of in the dark on some of this stuff, and
Absolutely.
I want to bring more communication and transparency.
Do you believe that the parents have the ultimate authority over their own children?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Do you?
Of course.
Justine?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes, we do. Parents have the ultimate authority to choose what their children do.
Do you guys support teachers being taught the critical race theory to then be passed on to our children, as far as the equality and culture responsive and education, social justice? How do you feel about critical race theory being taught to our children? Is that a yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not?
No.
We can't stand behind something like that. Part of the population of our school district is primarily white, and critical race theory teaches that is a bad thing somehow. I think that it's very important that we respect everybody for who they are, but we cannot try and demonize anyone.
Yeah.
I think to tag on with what Russell's saying is, I believe we can educate people to be respectful and honorable of, regardless of race, creed, origin, or nationality. But I don't think we need to bring critical race theory into this. I'm an educator, and I don't think we need to do that. I think we could do this in a civil way. Our history books, we can have conversations about slavery and things as such. And I think we can have good conversations that this is the things they went through without judging people.
And as an educator, are you hearing that being spoken within the actual education community, the teachers themselves? Like either pushing for or trying to speak out against, or is everybody remaining silent on the issue?
In the district that I work in special education, so I haven't heard much about it. I've seen it in the Springfield school districts.
Yes.
I've seen that a lot, but as far as Bolivar, I'm not aware that's being discussed or talked about at this present moment.
Do you support public schools teaching students ages 4 to 18 that there are more than 2 genders?
No. No, absolutely not. As a father, as a Christ follower, you know, God laid out the book. It's man and woman.
It's very important that we leave a lot of this stuff to the family to teach.
Absolutely.
That is why parental rights are so important, and that there are many subjects that shouldn't be addressed by the school system.
I know we teach sex ed in school, but that's how our bodies are scientifically made. They teach the science. Anything beyond that, I think, is just, it needs to be something that parents can teach if they want.
That to just serve, which then allowed you to be a part of what you saw going on in the culture. And is Bolivar open to that for parents to come in?
I'm so glad that we're post-COVID and we can welcome people back in. You know, our kids are going on field trips again, and gosh, we need parents for that. We need parent volunteers for so many things.
I'm not seeing that being put back out from the schools, that's we're back to any kind of an open door policy. I used to do the Watchdog Dads program. They completely shut it down, and they continued to tell us that you are not able to step into those. They don't want anybody on site during the school times that would be able to offer those kinds of services. I've not seen that
I would
opened back up and put back
you.
into the parents' laps, or else they're doing it and assuming everybody knows, but they were clear when they told us we couldn't come in.
Sure.
So
I would sure encourage
that-
you to reach out to Dr.
I'd
Mr.
like
about
to
that.
believe that we're open about having the parents' involvement, but maybe an outside field trip that's not inside the school, but being inside the school anymore. I'm not seeing where it's being opened up yet.
I would
Until
sure encourage you to reach out to Mr. Love. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I'll reach out to him tonight and ask him to talk to you about that, because they're definitely
because they need to be putting that out into the parents' faces beyond trying to get we want your opinion on going to a 4-day week, and we're not going to tell you what any of that means. They want us to have information, but when they make changes, there's not as much communication, and I don't know if that's the board trying to let them know that the superintendent needs to be much more front forward with the principals to put out the information, because each time some of these things happen, it seems like there's changes made and it's not disseminated the reasonings or the full information to parents. It's just a quick one-liner, and then you're just kind of left with darkness unless you're constantly trying to go out and seek information. So I hope they are still being open and opening back up to having us in.
Board members elected, is that something that you would really strive for, is to have parents and grandparents back in the school building after, of course, I mean, I believe the same thing. You need a background check before you come around children. But is that something that you would get back and forth very quickly? Because I feel like going forward, we have a lot of trauma that has to be undone, if it can be undone.
And I think that goes far to heal back what they think of the board being in charge of making some of those decisions, is that if they're pushing out, we want you back and we want you doing, and you're constantly preaching that out to them, then hopefully they will start to feel that there is bringing that back in, so that there can be more involvement and they can feel like their voices are heard, and you're seeing their faces and you're listening to them. You're able to engage them in times where they have a little bit of a break, and you're able to just strike up the conversation that's missing back in the community of what do the parents think of the administration or think of the teachers if they getting so little bit of contact. And they're starting to bring back having in-person evaluations of the kids after the quarters, and that's just now starting back, and it's been so long that we need to be pushing, bring yourself back in, because we want to re-engage.
It is really important that parents are involved, because the more that parents get involved, the better feedback board members can get from them. It's one thing to just hear something from your child when they come home and then try and get that, but firsthand experience that parents gain from volunteer programs is extremely important.
I would also add, too, as well as the 2 years we've been in the Pete and try to express that we're dealing with, is the traditional family, mom, dad, and a family is not as popular, is not happening. the need for mentorship. We know and we've heard, we've got to catch these kiddos up. I'm going to be honest with you, it's going to be hard for us to catch those kiddos up. What we need to do is meet that kiddo right where that kiddo is at and get them progressing forward and try to make up some of those gaps and those achievement things. And I think that goes right back to having those positive involvement and those positive educators that we have throughout the district. We've got some outstanding educators in the Bolivar district. And so I think just having that mentorship and being open and saying, hey, we want you, and not just a little blurb, hey, we want you, and then that's it. And I think that's something, that I would strive to say, hey, what are we doing about this?
I will say, not necessarily even a student's parent or grandparent, but anybody in the school. When I walk down the school, I feel like, or when I walk down the hall, I feel like a celebrity. Kids are like, Jenna's mom, or I get hugs all the time from kids, and that you can just see their face light up because it's somebody new, somebody different. It brings a level of comfort to see somebody else, a parent or a grandparent, walking the halls.
Do you believe that the academic achievements of Bolivar are on the right track?
Those scores are
What's the test is on?
a showing of how well a student is learning and growing that school year. But I would throw the other argument out. We have kiddos who are not good test takers. And so I would have to go, hey, are we going to say the success of that teacher, the success of that student is based on a standardized test? They have value, they have merit, we use them as a measuring tool. But there's kiddos that know the material, can tell you the material, but when it comes to tests, they freeze up. Research will show that this test freeze up. And, I think we see by what they can show us, and those tests are just a piece of that.
There's a problem with comparing ourselves to other communities and other areas. It's very important that we look and I understand that those are important numbers for financing reasons and a lot of other stuff, but it's very important that we compare ourselves with our own potential. What can we get to? How can we do better? And are we selling these children short in any way rather than how well do we base our success on their comparison with another town down the road?